Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
What is going on? Welcome to the 817 podcast, where we talk about the amazing city of Fort Worth, from business, culture, politics, and trends in our lovely city. Now, it's EJ with Anthony here again at the 817 podcast. What's going on, Anthony? How was your week?
Man, the week was good. The weather is turning cooler, which is fantastic, but seasonal allergies are also terrible for me right now. But week was overwhelmingly good. And man, there is a heck of a lot of news I felt like this week. So much stuff.
Yeah, for sure. This is a packed episode, and it's exciting because I just think a lot's happening in Fort Worth. And it was one of those weeks where the papers weren't just trying to find stories. I felt like they had plenty to talk about.
Yep.
So it just felt pretty healthy. But we're going to go ahead and just dive into it, kind of breaking down these stories. We have three short stories, which is first one's really focused on, just really quickly, is around if you're not registered to vote. I know it feels like you're always voting when it comes to being an 817 podcaster, but it's a part of the life that we need to do. How to register to vote for bond and the election in November. Today, because this records, even though we record on Sunday, you listen on Monday. Today is the last day to register to vote for the November election that features 2 Tarrant County bond proposals and a slate of proposed amendments to the Texas Constitution. Now, we're going to dive into a lot of the propositions later on, as the election isn't till November 2nd, but we need you to make sure to know that you got to get your voter registration completed if you're not ready to vote. And I know it's exciting to vote for the federal elections and all that, but these are the ones that impact us every single day. Do you have any comments on this story, Tony?
Yeah, I would just tell folks I'm looking forward to it. I think, it will likely be you and Jimmy leading the charge on this to tell us kind of what we're voting on. So I think that's future episode, good tease. I'm excited to hear that, because early voting will start on October the 18th, and then the last day of in-person early voting is October 29th. So that gives you a couple of 817 podcasts to listen to make sure folks are informed way before election day, but also during election early voting as well. So yeah, good reminder to get registered, and then more importantly, get registered and then make sure you know what's going to be on that ballot. I scrolled through this quick Star Telegram article. I realized there was a lot, so I look forward to the 817 podcast diving into what is on our ballots so that we are more informed and can make good decisions.
Yeah, and looking at it too, just to make sure, like, if you're part of these neighborhoods, you're going to have local kind of things voting on specific to your city. City of Benbrook, City of Keller, City of Southlake, the Town of Trophy Club, City of Watauga, City of White Settlement, Azle ISD, Carroll ISD, Fort Worth ISD, we're doing the big school bond, Godley ISD, Mansfield ISD, and White Settlement ISD. So if you heard your neighborhood, that's why it's important for you to get out there and register to vote if you have not set that up. The second story here is about how renewable energy is growing fastest in conservative states, with the state of Texas leading. And I want to discuss, and Tony and I want to discuss, how Fort Worth plays into all that. So as you know, we've been trying to lure the Amazon-backed electric vehicle maker Rivian, which Friday confirmed it will be filing its papers for an initial public offering, aiming to sell on the NASDAQ under the symbol RIVN. Now, the reason why this is big is because they're looking to basically raise $8 billion at an $80 billion valuation in the IPO, which would make it the 4th largest U.S. IPO in the last decade. And what's crazy about it, it would also make it the value of GM, which is a historical automaker company. So there's a lot of hype around this company, and we are one of a few cities, including Mesa, Arizona, who are competing for the 2,000-acre site factory of Rivian Automotive. The area that we're looking to do it in, Fort Worth, which we talked about, was Walsh Development. And what's also to note is that Tarrant County has delayed its vote on a potential tax abatement for the California-based company, as Tarrant County and Parker County is also planning a tax break for it. Rivian projects investing $5 billion and adding 7,500 full-time jobs by the end of 2027. If those projections were met at Fort Worth area site, it would make Rivian one of the largest employers in Dallas-Fort Worth. So not only is there like national hype, there's hype to this here in Fort Worth, Tarrant County. The vote was scheduled Tuesday, and to discuss a $35.8 million tax break, which equates to a decade-long 70% abatement on the value of Rivian. And so we're going to see how that works. The city as well also approved a $440 million tax break for Rivian, which equates to 85% of maintenance and operation property taxes over 15 years. We are doing all we can. And so I kind of share this with you while also talking about, Texas as a whole being a green economy state. If we have to understand that as an industry, not only does Texas compete with the electric companies and competing against Ford and GM, who are also out there building factories so that they can compete in the electric truck market, but we also have to realize Texas employs almost as many people in wind, solar, and electricity storage as the entire mining industry that President Trump used to harp on about important jobs. So the kicker here of this story is that there's a lot happening in Texas around the green economy. There's a lot advocating for here in Fort Worth. But due to the fossil fuel organizations and lobby groups, we're not having our Texas officials and the Texas brand moving with where the data is going and where it shows that we're actually doing the work to build green economy here in Fort Worth, here in Texas.
Yeah, and before we get into the kind of the shift into more eco-friendly, more green energy sources, a couple of things about Rivian. We read in an article that they had about just under 50,000 pre-orders for the pickup truck, which is what they're trying to bring here. That's in addition to the 100,000 that Amazon is online to buy. So that's about 150,000 pre-orders for their vehicles, right? To your point about competitors, I've heard recently that the Ford Lightning, the e-truck that Ford is putting out on the market, also is at about 150,000 pre-orders. So it's exciting, and I think that both of these products and all of these competitors can be here. There's clearly an appetite for electric vehicles. So if there are folks listening, or if you're someone who is, listening to folks in the Fort Worth arena saying like, oh, electric cars, that'll never take off in Texas. Well, Ford's putting their money down, they're doubling down, and then Rivian looks to be like they're going to be successful here, in spite of some challenges that they've had in the last few years. I think it's a really great opportunity for Fort Worth to bring something cool and innovative and allow that to change part of the narrative around like, we are an oil and gas state and this is what we do. That's great. I think we can have both. We can also have electric vehicles and start to innovate there.
Something to know as well about Rivian is that it is far from profitable. It's still losing a lot of money. $994 million it has lost, nearly $1 billion in the first 6 months of 2021, and over $1 billion in 2020. So that's kind of the scary part here is like, this could be there. We've seen successful and unsuccessful green vehicle IPOs in the last few quarters. And so there is a lot of risk here, and which is why, the Ecoplex and things we're about to talk about outside of just electric vehicles are also vital and important to the messaging and conversation in Texas. It just blows my mind how Texas is leading the way in green economies, but we are holding on and staying attached to the oil and gas brand.
So the Ecoplex is kind of they say they don't have a champion, but the article in the Fort Worth Report kept talking about Joseph Horn. He's an attorney and a president of Ecoplex. The Ecoplex is a think tank and accelerator for environmental, non-governmental organizations and corporate sustainability. And the idea is that they'll make this large museum that's going to showcase technology developed by the Center for Innovation and Applied Sciences. To EJ's point, one of the things that we're lacking right now in the city is funding. And what Mr. Horn said about that is, we've spoken with lots of corporations, this is a quote, philanthropic organizations, and a lot of them are sitting on the side waiting to see what's going to happen. we don't have a champion like Ed Bass coming in and paying for it. We would like Fort Worth to champion it, not one organization or corporation, but everybody. And I think that, that is a little bit of an uphill climb because, we're pretty museum heavy and we are a little bit known as the oil and gas town. So is something like the Ecoplex going to take off? And I think it's not about seeing one thing separate of another. It's about seeing Rivian. It's about seeing the Ecoplex. It's about seeing the larger conversation nationally around more sustainable, greener energy solutions, right? Another really cool thing I thought in the article was how much engagement there is from Tarrant County College, University of Texas at Arlington, and TCU. This seems to be something that we want to happen. And their advisory board, which I know is probably filled with people who are just like, I got an email, I gave it a thumbs up. But it seems to be a lot of folks who are very influential in the city of Fort Worth. So I think the Ecoplex could be cool, and it should be shifting the narrative of what it means to be a Texan and add some value to going green in Texas.
I think the Rivian thing is a great, awesome possibility if we outbeat Mesa, Arizona, and we're able to make that move. We definitely, Arizona kind of became the semiconductor HQ for America. So it'd be nice for Texas to be maybe, if we look at solar or wind, maybe batteries. I think I'm worried with GM and Ford and Detroit coming back. I'm just making a stronger investment and being still the vehicle hub of the country. I think this Ecoplex allows us to diversify our brand when it comes to the green economy. And going back to the problem is Texas is leading in all this, but fossil fuel companies are not giving up the brand, and Texas politicians are staying far away of embracing how successful we are in the green economy. Reading an Economist article, they talked about how the fossil fuel lobbyists is spending about $13 to 1 compared to renewable lobbyists when it comes to getting policies passed and in the at the federal level, at state levels. And so that's, Texas is back pocketed big there. And so we're excited to see that Fort Worth is chasing Rivian, which is about to have a blockbuster IPO. And the Ecoplex to continue to maybe build a platform. The Ecoplex says it needs $3 million to actually get going and to actually be stable. But we'll see. And I know Innovate Fort Worth with Cameron Cushman did an interview with Mr. Horn. So if you want a longer kind of conversation about what the Ecoplex is, we'll also have that link in the bio as well.
Alrighty, so heading into our third story, or kind of our third small story, we'll say, is about there seems to be a lot more development in areas in Fort Worth that are historically, dominated by people of color, right? So one of those stories is about, the luxury home builder plans development near Fort Worth's Lake Como, and this is from the Star Telegram. So Texas In-Town Homes plans to build 20 attached and 27 detached single-family homes south of Diaz Avenue and west of Pentecost Street next to Lake Como Park, according to city documents. At first glance, it's like, oh, cool, like we're building in Como, like that's exciting, like let's invest in the neighborhood. But the article goes on to ask some pretty good questions of some of the community leaders there. Mary Jo Thomas, the former president of the Greater Fort Worth Association of Realtors, she worries about the development's effect on affordable housing. She said Fort Worth has a greater need for affordable housing, specifically in the sub $200,000 range. And the Star Telegram left the numbers here for what this housing complex, Texas In-Town Homes, what their average home prices are, as you might imagine, are well above $200,000. So new homes, good. New homes that cost a lot of money seems to be bad.
Well, what's happening is, Como is finally kind of becoming on its last breath. I mean, it's unfortunate because all of the history and culture from Como and from the music scenes, and I just think about older Fort Worthians telling me about Como as a place with so much vibrant culture and music and history. It's an iconic piece to the fabric of Fort Worth, and it's now going to be just swallowed up by the Whole Foods economy in the West Fort Worth. Now, I know in Como's kind of the end of the gentrification in the West. But the gentrification is now something we might need to question in the East and the South Side, as Evans and Rosedale development is expected to begin in Q3 of 2022. Now, the story I'm sharing here is about the Fort Worth Business Press, and it's from the Fort Worth Business Press, and how in 2019, the city of Fort Worth selected Hoque Global, Hoque Global, not sure if I'm saying that right, a new mixed-use development in the historic South Side Fort Worth, which will be anchored by community-serving commercial and innovation spaces, a neighborhood-centric food and beverage concept, and a diverse mix of housing, such as townhomes, apartments, and live-work units. Hoque Global and the city of Fort Worth said they're working together to attract a grocer to protect to serve the greater surrounding community, which has often been seen as a food desert, cited as a food desert, or an area with few grocery stores. To attempt to maintain the historic fabric of the community, the team has designed the project with existing structures and the feature characteristics of the area, according to the new release from the firm. Townhomes are planned to line the eastern portion of the site to tie with the adjacent residential community, talking about South Main and the other areas that's been developed. Large structures west, including a multifamily apartment block with 4 to 5 stories along the freeway. What else is here in the story? It's about 7.5 acre development and 320 multifamily apartments available. Green spaces are designed to be destinations for local events and social gatherings, environment, outdoor spaces. So honestly, my fear with this story here is that what is happening in Como is the end of, the gentrification process in the West. And could this be the beginning of the gentrification process in the East and the South Side once you pass 35? I think a lot of this sounds like intentional jargon and stories that real estate corporations chase to talk about when it comes to investing in areas. But my big fear here is that the difference also with Como, a lot of that's about asset building. At least people who can afford it can build an asset. A lot of this is about renting office space, renting homes. And what most people I feel like need in Fort Worth, especially as Black and brown communities are getting older and becoming young professionals and need to start building wealth, Black and brown families need access to ownership and land. And that just simply seems not the case to be happening for us. Not just in Fort Worth, but across the country. We're expected in 2045, less people own homes. And that means the people who are getting impacted are going to be Black and brown families who are finally building some white collar jobs, white collar wealth, and now are going to be competing against large corporations like BlackRock, JP Morgan, who are investing and swallowing up all the housing and areas like in Fort Worth. 1 in 4 house purchased in Phoenix, Las Vegas are purchased by a corporation. It's 1 of 6 in America. And you're starting to see that in Fort Worth. These places are swallowing up areas where it's like the last chance for young people to build wealth. And so cool. I think this sounds really cool, but it seems like more renting, making it limited for people to actually earn wealth in the loop of Fort Worth. If you're selling a house, the goal, like your, good to society should be the hope, not to hope, but to be intentional that you are selling your home to a family, to real humans who are planning to live in your home, who are planning to contribute to the community and be intentional on the social fabric that they're building, rather than trying to build and flip and paper mache up, like we like to say, apartments or a rental space. I think there's a hunger for home ownership, but that's simply not happening as bigger organizations are coming into this space and gobbling up all the single family homes. Sure, today, these large companies only own 2% of the total rental housing stock in America, but it just seems like this next decade, the predicament we're in is that households aren't going to be able to buy homes because in America, the median home cost is 4.3 times the median household income. That's up from 3.9 in 2002. And I just don't know where it goes down from here. 16% of single family homes for sale were bought by investors in the second quarter of this year. We have to think about, what's happening in Como is gentrification. What's happening in Evans and Rosedale seems like gentrification, but at least it seems like more renting and less asset building for Black and brown communities. If anything, we're pushing people out. So we'll see. This is just like one of my biggest new fears about the world is that we're really underestimating the impact of the real estate market and what it does to further future residents and their ability to create net worth.
Yeah, I do, nationally, I mean, every city, right? Every city in America is a microcosm of what's going on in across the country. What I think here is, this is gentrification, and we're just not calling it that in the article. It's not starting that way. Some folks use the word, and it's sprinkled in here. I think that what really gets under my skin is the displacement and the inconsideration for how it's going to happen, right? So at the end of the day, like someone bought the land. They're going to build all these homes. And it says that this company, again, it's Texas In-Town Homes. Their prices range from $455,000 to $854,000 in Dallas. And in the Houston area, they range from $369,000 to $830,000, right? Well above what someone in Fort Worth, someone close to the work is saying, hey, we need more sub $200,000 housing options. So even if they're not building for the community that they're going to build in, right? Because they're not, let's be honest, they're trying to attract people who are going to spend a lot of money, who want to be close to the urban core. The long-term effect is you're going to displace people who have been here for a long time. And my question is, when those property taxes push folks out of Como, I just keep asking the question of like, where's everybody going to go? What are we doing to folks in America? And it really frustrates me because, to your point about, do we think that housing is a right? Do we think that people deserve to live the lives where they are and where they grew up? I think that the value system really is, it showcased is, if you can't afford it, that's on you. This is your fault, and we're going to push you out. Never mind all of the other factors that come along with it. Job availability in that area, access to wealth, access to additional resources, all of those things. Instead, it's just, we'll keep on pushing, build more houses, and we'll see what the city looks like. I'm curious, right? And some of the community leaders in the article said hey, I'm waiting to pass judgment until the project is closer to completion. We still don't know what this is going to look like. So keeping an eye on this in the periphery, if you're a Fort Worthian, if you're near Lake Como, or even if you're not, I think it's important to know what's going on in all of our neighborhoods.
All right, so the big story is that the new congressional maps were released last week by Texas Republicans to lock the party's advantage in Washington over the next decade by building maps that are additioned to the gerrymandered maps in 2010. The new proposed district lines will offset the population growth spurred by communities' colors and diminish the voting power of those groups. Now, the strategy here was that rather than creating more Republican congressional districts, the Texas legislature chose to bolster incumbents with safer districts. There are far fewer toss-ups or competitive districts in the proposed maps, which will deal a blow to any Democratic hopes of flipping a competitive seat or two in Texas during the 2022 midterm election, which deepens polarization to pump up primaries. Now, there's a map that I'm currently looking at, a New York Times article that was just released while we were recording this pod on Sunday. So this is fresh information. But the map shows that the Texas congressional districts 2020 presidential voter margin. And it showed that 14 districts had a voter margin of 10 points in Texas. Now, if you change the proposed districts, it would go to 14-3. Now, giving much greater additions to the Republicans, as that's the goal, is to boost the amount of Republican seats by preventing close margin districts. Now, like, here's a great example. The 10th congressional district will see a presidential margin grow from 2-point Republican advantage to 20. District 21 will be 3 points to 20. Now, the other piece here is to note that, of course, this is the first draft of Texas map, and it's subject to change throughout the process. But both sides kind of feel that this is going to be kind of what it is, and there won't be any significant alterations to the redistricting maps that have been offered. Now, the strategy that you're going to see in the maps, and Tony's going to go through the impacts it has on our local seats in the House, and then also in the Texas seats as well, the Texas state seats. The strategy was, they added a Harris County seat, and they split up Dallas into more large and rural areas. District 6, for example, which was Representative Ron White, which had Donald Trump by 3 points, now extends much farther to the southeast to add more rural and Republican-leading voters, which will boost the margin to 20%. The similar things are happening in the 25th district held by Roger Williams, and the Rosedale district was expanded significantly to the west out of the Fort Worth suburbs into rural areas, fortifying their advantage. They're also consolidating Democratic growth in Austin and spreading out the Latino vote. But I'm going ahead to pass it to Tony here to really kind of talk about the impact and where he sees kind of the biggest eyesore in all of this.
Alrighty, so big article, big stuff. And I'm going to be honest with everybody. I got an education this week by reading my local newspaper and diving into maps and really looking at these stories that are dense and complicated, but super important to what we're doing. So, article that I'll be talking about is these Texas counties are getting new congressional districts and proposed map. That is the title of the article from the Star Telegram on September the 27th. Lawmakers in Austin, the Texas Senate on Monday released drafts of congressional maps filled by Senator Joan Huffman, a Houston Republican. And the map, what it tells us is that new congressional districts are going to go to both Harris and Travis County. If you're not familiar, if you're a new Texan, Harris County is the Houston area and Travis County is the Austin area. But there are some really interesting things happening here, including, that Tarrant County didn't gain one of the new districts, but it would get an additional congressional representative, which means we'd go from 6 reps to 7. Also, with the redistricting, the largest congressional district is District 12, held by Kay Granger. It's the area that I live in, and a lot of folks in Fort Worth live in. I think it's kind of interesting that she has such a big handle on Fort Worth, and Mayor Parker also came out of that office, right? I think she was an intern for Kay Granger's office once upon a time. And currently, Granger's district, District 12, makes up 33% of the county. It would go down to 31% of the county, a big whop. That is like the hidden piece where it's like, oh, Kay Granger in this redistricting loses a little bit. But who's gaining a lot? Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't remember Miss Beth Van Dyne, let me remind you, this is our Trump-aligned friend who had, the commercials with Chief Wayborn wearing a taxpayer uniform in a political advertisement to support a political candidate. You can go back about a year and listen to those podcast episodes with EJ and Jimmy. They were fantastic. But Miss Van Dyne is in District 24. Under this map, her influence in Tarrant County is about to go from 14% to 24%. So I'm guessing that Chief Wayborn's support in that was good for her. In the current maps that we have, Miss Van Dyne represents parts of Hearst, Euless, Bedford, Colleyville, Southlake, and Grapevine. So she already has that part of Tarrant County. What the new map would include is pretty much all of the Alliance Keller area. She would pick up all of North Tarrant County, north of 820 and east of I-35. And I got to say, that is incredibly problematic. So Ms. Granger and Beth together, their two districts, Districts 12 and District 24, would make up over 50% of Tarrant County. And I don't know that the areas that they have represent what the city of Fort Worth actually looks like. A lot of what I'm saying is, I will tell everybody this. I am not an expert in congressional maps. I'm not an expert in how all of these pieces fit together. But what I do know is this. Beth Van Dyne is living in Dallas, and the way that these lines are drawn gives her a hell of a lot of influence over a county that I promise you she's only in when she's here to collect a check. I am very frustrated by what I'm seeing on paper, and I'm very frustrated by how these lines on the new congressional maps, and again, it's a proposed map, continue to silence and minimize the voices of Black and Latinx populations. There's a heck of a lot of meat here. I think EJ and I are going to go back and forth with information that's in the article, data and statistics. It might get a little blurry. So if I were you, I would definitely follow along by reading these articles whenever you get a chance.
Tarrant County gained over 301,000 new residents, the fifth most of all U.S. counties. Harris County gained the most. Bexar County, which is San Antonio, gained 6, and Travis County is the ninth most, which is interesting why Travis got a seat, right? I think of being at the ninth, because I think they really chopped up Tarrant County. But what I think the biggest common thing that we're hearing all the time is how 95% of the new population in Texas was minority residents, right? Hispanic, people of color. But what's crazy is that the majority Hispanic, like state house districts, which is kind of breaking down. Beth Van Dyne is kind of the federal level House representative, but even Texas has their own, right, Senate and House. So, like, you know, for us, for example, that would be like Nicole Collier, Ramon Romero. But like what you're seeing is that Hispanics loss of even in the state seats. We had 33 of the 150 seats. Now there's only 30, right? And then also when it comes to majority Black House districts, it went from 7 to 4. So this is not just something you're seeing with Beth Van Dyne and those reps, but you're also seeing it at our state level politicians as well.
Yeah, these lines are, and again, this is complex, and I would guess that the 817 podcast is going to continue to bring you updates and information about this, because we are looking at the first proposal, but it's one thing to, and myself, I'm going to make this about me. I'm guilty of this. I am guilty of saying like, oh yeah, gerrymandering is real, and we have these lines and these divisions, and it actually impacts the way that, you know, representation in this state matters, and how it works, and whose voices are at the table. I'm not the brightest person in the world, y'all, but I'm telling you that after spending 10, 15 minutes looking at these maps, it got my blood boiling. It got me fired up. I don't understand how your Hispanic, Latinx, and Black population can increase, but somehow the seats at the table decrease. I don't understand how political parties are allowed to just slice up parts of a community the way that they do. For example, one of the things that really caught my eye is if you look at District 33. District 33 includes parts of West Dallas and then all of the inner parts of Fort Worth. If you follow that map, or better yet, if you go to the interactive link that EJ is going to share with y'all, if you click on it, you'll see that, you know, it's overwhelmingly people of color, 20% Black, 57% Hispanic. So 77% of people in District 33, which again expands from West Dallas to East Fort Worth, is 77% people of color, right? And it's one district. And what it is, it's legitimately just these lines that curve and they shake and they move all over the Metroplex to ensure that they gather as many people of color into a district so that the other 5 representatives or the other 5 districts in Tarrant County don't have to worry about those pesky people of color voting out their white Republican counterparts. Truly mind-blowing to look at the numbers. There's projections. They even broke it down in terms of like, well, what will this mean for voting? For example, in the Senate elections with Van Dyne's current map, so District 24's current map, John Cornyn saw about 50% of the votes. Under the new map, he would gain almost 60% of the votes. So we know, looking at this map, reading the article, we know what this is about. It's about people of color. This is about silencing a minority community and making sure that white Republican majority stays in as much power as possible by eliminating the voices of their competitors and of the constituents that don't see eye to eye with them. I would really welcome other people's opinions. I am having a hard time getting out of my emotion for this one, so I'm just really transfixed on those couple of things. But Ms. Van Dyne, I don't think, is a good representation of Tarrant County. And Ms. Granger, I think it might be time for her to sit back and give up some of that power as well. But I'm really disheartened by what I'm learning today.
Yeah, and I guess what I also want to hit here too is the impact it has on Senate District 10. So kind of breaking this down again, we have our federal senators, right? Cornyn is our guy, and Cruz or whatever, and so and then our reps, Van Dyne, Kay Granger, those are the people we're talking about. Then we have the Texas Senate and the Texas House, and we broke down how the Texas House is losing minority representation, but also from the Texas Senate, Tarrant has one Democratic Senator, Beverly Powell of Burleson. And so this is also impacting that seat as the district population is changing. So I thought that was another big kicker where, it's changing so much that a guy named Dr. Phil King, a Rutherford Republican, has said he will run for that seat. And I saw a quote by this guy, and his quote said, "Friends, as we know, the Democrats in Texas have fully embraced the radical agenda of their national party in promoting policies that are dangerous to public safety and a threat to individual liberty. They want to open our borders and defund the police, wreck our oil and gas industry and manufacturing base, increase taxes, and push their woke social agenda on all of us." So this guy is going to run for a Senate seat in Texas. We just talked about in Rivian, in the Ecoplex, how Texas is leading in green economy.
Right.
And this is a guy who's using the Trump, rhetoric on that to make us fear and keep us kind of stuck in old industries. So this is impacting all seats in all different areas. There will be a committee hearing on the map, specifically the House's initial draft of the map, around where the public can testify in person or virtually, which is scheduled for today. So I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but that's happening today.
All right. So just to kind of wrap us up out of here. And again, I know I was kind of all over the place. Please read the article. It's a really informative one. But to close this out, the Texas NAACP president, Gary Bledsoe, said the proposed map vastly diminishes the voting strength of minorities all around the state by either packing them into districts already electing minority candidates of choice or cracking them by pushing them into districts dominated by conservative white voters. As the state has garnered 2 new congressional seats on the backs of its minority population, it has sought to put forth a proposed congressional map that is clearly retrogressive. Race is the conversation here. That's evident. And if you're someone who, feels like, oh, I'm tired of race and, oh, I'm tired of hearing that part of the conversation, I'm going to ask you to check your privilege because this is the life that we got to live out here, and it is informing the way that major decisions are being made. To get out of a little bit of the negative headspace here, because again, this is a proposal, none of this is set in stone. To get away from that though, conversations about race are complicated, they matter. And one of the good stories that I did see come out of the Fort Worth report has to do with Fort Worth trying to become a, quote, radically inclusive city. So the Rainwater Charitable Foundation has brought a group called Dallas Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation to Fort Worth to help come up with and provide solutions for racial equity in the city, which I think is there's a lot of really good things happening here. So we know that racism has a history in Fort Worth. If you read the article from the Fort Worth Report, Dr. Max Crockmull from TCU kind of talks a little bit about how the fort itself was built to protect white settlers from Native American populations. But anyways, the whole point of this is that there are going to be conversations happening in the city about, what are we talking about when we say racial equity? How does race actually impact us? So if you're someone who has a genuine interest, has a story to tell, or is, wants to just hear from other people's perspectives. And I think for me, that's always my thing, is I know my lens, I know my history, and I kind of have my own ideas of how it impacted me, but I want to hear from more people in Fort Worth. So Dallas Truth and Racial Healing is having conversations, and they have some coming up as soon as today. If you're listening to the podcast on Monday, October 5th from 6 to 7:30 at Artes de la Rosa, Rose Marine Theater, 1440 North Main Street. And then there are some other ones coming up as well, October the 12th, October the 26th. You can find out more at racialequitynowtexas.org and RSVP there as well.
Yeah, and looking at the kind of the investment that we're making, that Rainwater is making, it's looking like $275,000 on this initiative to the nonprofit to provide and organize this kind of information and the training for the community. Interested to see where this goes. I think it's something to have that conversation around the redistricting lines. Also, the story earlier about wealth and like housing. And so I think it kind of hits a lot of different pieces for us as we become a more equitable city.
Yeah. And, so from the article again, the organization plans to share a larger, more expansive community racial history once they collect data from the community. So these sessions are important. They want to hear as many voices as they can in order to lead to a shared new community vision for Fort Worth, which I think is beautiful. And I, again, love the lean in from community partners here. There's a lot of mention from a lot of different Fort Worth folks here. There's criticism of this being a Dallas-based organization. Why didn't Rainwater find someone who was Fort Worth-based? So good critical thinking questions, good opportunities. And we all know, this stuff overlaps. It's laws, it's racial wealth, it's education, it's housing, it's, voting equity. So really excited to see what comes out of the conversations, because like so many conversations, and I know I'm guilty of it too, right? Have a great conversation on the pod, and then it's on to the next thing and on to, the tyranny of the urgent.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get to wins and losses.
Yeah, I'm happy to kick us off with a loss. So my loss is kind of a silly one, but maybe a little lighthearted is good. Have y'all heard? I didn't hear about this until I was watching the news one day, and there's a TikTok smack a teacher challenge or something. Anyways, I don't have a TikTok. I'm a bad millennial, and I only have one social media outlet. And apparently, there are challenges going around on TikTok where students are being encouraged to hit teachers and destroy school property and all this stuff. And in my mind, I'm like, that sounds goofy. That's one of those things that doesn't actually impact the world and communities. Nope, I was wrong. Fort Worth ISD legitimately had to put out a statement to students telling them that they will, quote, they will show zero tolerance for criminal behavior and ask parents to, quote, be aware and monitor their children's online activities. So the big L here goes to TikTok, social media, and kids just being just foolish and dumb and doing dumb things at schools when already the adults in their lives have so much going on and all of the challenges that they're having to meet with school. Now they got to worry about kids completing TikTok challenges in class. Heart goes out to you, teachers.
Yeah, I was in schools, and they were talking about how kids stole the soap dispensaries at their school.
Water fountains are coming off the walls. It's ridiculous.
You just got back. You've been stuck in your house all day, and you come back, and
and you tear it up.
Yeah, Anyways, these young guns.
Feel like an old person.
Yeah. For my loss, for third year in a row, Tarrant County has banned outdoor burning for 90 days, which will last through the end of December. No open flames, sparks, or embers are allowed. A violation of the ban is a Class C misdemeanor, which is up to a fine of $500. This is just, hey, it's kind of, as the weather gets cool, and I mean, even at your house, we love to, get around the fire.
Yeah,
I know, it's just kind of unfortunate. I think this is an L because fire pits are fun. and
Yeah.
to gather and drink, smoke some stoves or something like that.
Yeah, man.
Around a fire.
But
seems to, have to be on hold.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm glad you said it because, of course, I am going to do my part. I will not be lighting that fire pit until I know for sure the burn ban has been lifted, or I might read and make sure that I'm following whatever rules there are. But we need some rain. Need some rain in the forecast.
Yeah. But the weather's good. The weather's good. This cool weather's great, and I'm loving it. You want to go to wins? I actually will start with my win, and then you could go to yours because I'm excited about yours. It's kind of more of a conversation. My win is me and my wife went to the Women's March this Saturday, and it was just super inspiring. Over 2,000 people at the march, marching down Main Street. I was honestly not expecting that many people.
Yeah.
I thought last year, you thought like the whole Trump and the whole time, Trump really kind of fired people up, and then you also had just us having more time and us being stuck at home and just there was a lot more activism. So I thought like, it was going to be not that big of a draw. There was a ton of people there.
Right.
Elizabeth Beck spoke. The head of the Democratic Tarrant organization spoke, who used to be Deborah Peoples' position.
Right.
New person spoke. And then also Nicole Collier spoke. It was just super awesome to see all different types of people, super young students active with activism, 90-year-old people out there, still fighting for women's rights. It was just a really cool, proud Fort Worth moment, and it was just cool to just be there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's great to hear that. I saw pictures and I saw the article, and it sounds like it was a great turnout. It's exciting. It's exciting that people are there, and I hope that we can do something to make sure that those voices are heard, more importantly.
Yeah.
My win is kind of more in your wheelhouse in
This
terms
might be
of,
the best story in my opinion all week.
It's a happy story. I think it's a very happy story. So the University of North Texas Health Science Center at Fort Worth is going to lead a massive new federal project to train a more diverse workforce in the world of artificial intelligence and healthcare. And this is an announcement from the National Institutes of Health. So once again, national eyes on Dallas-Fort Worth. So the Fort Worth campus of the UNT Health Science Center will serve as ground zero for the nationwide project to tackle an urgent question facing the country's healthcare system. Congress has allocated $100 million over the next 2 years to fund the program, where the Health Science Center has been named the coordinating center, which is great. Is it awesome that we get to be a part of an innovative conversation in the eyes of the medical community, and artificial intelligence are going to be on Fort Worth? Yes, it is. But the article also did kind of showed why they're doing it. And they're worried about, and y'all, like I'm talking about, like this blew my mind. We're worried about artificial intelligence. If it is created by people, we're worried about it being as biased as we are, because we all have our own biases. And so the project is really focused on how do we make a more equitable AI for medical professionals is an outstanding thing. And it's really exciting that, anytime new information and updates come out about this, it's going to be coming from Fort Worth. But EJ, I know you had some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, no, it's important to get diverse communities involved in tech. I always get passionate. Like reading this, I said, we need to be inspired by two AIs as black and brown people, and that's Allen Iverson and artificial intelligence. If we can blend those two things as people, we are unstoppable. Understanding the power that we have from a cultural, from a societal, from a just identity, but then being able to actually invest in skills that are emerging. This $100 million, I just think is awesome for that, because currently artificial intelligence PhDs graduates in 2019, 3.2% were Hispanic, 2.4% were black, according to a conducted research by Computing Research Association. The same survey found that 45% of graduates were white and 22.4% were Asian. And the other big piece is that regardless of ethnicity or race, this is also a gender play, with 18.3% of artificial intelligence and computer science PhD graduates are women. So we're still, not just a race game, but also gender. And I think that's important when we look at algorithms and how we do that. And you see all the crazy things kind of happening around Facebook and Instagram and all the new research that's being dropped out around how the social media is impacting girls and their body and their mental health and just the anxiety that we have around social media. So it's just a good time. And the fact that Health Science Center is a part of that, getting that kind of funding, it's going to be a long game though, right? To get a PhD, it takes you 10 years. So it's going to be a long game of change. But I think like what's cool is like what kind of city is Fort Worth going to be around that time too? So if we can actually make solutions and solve this problem while also seeing our city become more nationally aware, I think it's going to be a cool timing.
Well, and if you have $100 million from the federal government to work on a project like this, those 2%, 3% minority PhDs who are going to work on this AI, they're going to come here, right? Like I'm going to work where the job is, where the money is, and where my passion project is. And that's going to be right here in Fort Worth, Texas. So I hope that if it does help us recruit these individuals to the area and they're excited to work on this project, it will also help in them saying, hey, I'm going to commit to this area. I want to work harder in this area. And I want to find a way to say, let's create more initiatives, because it's going to start, you're right, to your point, it's going to start in the K-12 and it's going to work its way up. I think that this has a world of potential behind it. It's really exciting. Again, national initiative right here in Fort Worth, Texas, one that is going to, let's face it, healthcare, algorithms, artificial intelligence, this is stuff that is going to shape our world for decades to come, and it's going to happen right here in Fort Worth, Texas. That's dope.
Well, way to end it. We did a lot today. We started with making sure you go out and get your vote registration card set up if you're not voting, ready to vote for November 2nd, all the way to talking about this. So it's super dense episode. Looking forward to hearing y'all's feedback, and we'll be back at it next week.
Control your life, control your life. Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe.